to the creepy man wearing a coat in the summer heat. So this happened over a decade ago, but thinking about it still sends shivers down my spine. It was a hot summer day and me, 11F, my sister, 9F, and a friend of ours, 11F, decided to enjoy it with other kids in park. Now the park was some distance away from our houses, essentially in another neighborhood. A bus drive would have taken us 15 minutes, but we decided to walk to and from the park, as it was summer and we enjoyed playing along the way and doing the usual kids stuff. Now the city we live in is pretty safe, and it was common for kids to undertake such journeys without the supervision of parents and other adults. After a 30-minute walk we arrived at the park and had a blast. We stayed for a couple of hours and bought ice cream in a nearby shop before heading home. We enjoyed our ice cream and sang silly songs, strolling in the general direction of our neighborhood, when I got the feeling that someone was behind us. I turned my head around, just for a second, as I couldn't shake the strange feeling. I saw a man walking some good distance behind us and remember noticing that he was wearing a black coat. Now that hit me as strange, being that it was the middle of August and really warm outside. So I looked again. The man was wearing a coat, black shoes, a hat and sunglasses, which made it impossible to see his face. Now what really freaked me out was the fact that his ankles and calves were bare. No socks and most importantly, no pants. He was also a bit closer than he was just a second ago. Not wanting to freak out my baby sister, I whispered to my friend that I thought the guy was maybe following us. She took a look, and made a panicked expression upon seeing the guy herself. Now, we were walking on the main road, but there were no houses, just a wooded area and bushes on both sides. I knew she was asking herself the same question: where the hell did he come from? Even as a child, I was pretty calm and didn't tend to make a fuss about stuff, so I wanted to put my "this weird guy is following us" theory to the test. I touched my sister's shoulder, screamed, "Tag, you're it," and started running. My friend following. As we ran I turned around and sure as hell the creepy man started running as well. My stomach literally dropped and I screamed to both my sister and my friend that the guy was following us and we should run. Chaos ensued. My sister, upon seeing the guy and being a smart kid, put two and two together and promptly started crying. Thankfully the man was some distance away and we were three pretty fast kids, aware of a few shortcuts. It didn't stop us from crying while running though. We ran like hell, and I remember it all being a blur until we essentially crashed into an old man. He was well known in our neighborhood, a good-natured homeless guy who survived by selling trinkets and, well, junk, but he was well liked in the community for his good-naturedness, so people would buy it to help him out. We basically screamed at him from the top of our lungs, panicked, pointing at the man who, mind you, was still running behind us, now abruptly stopping. The old man rushed us home, saying he would take care of it. To this day I couldn't thank him enough. We made it safely to my friend's house where her grandmother did her best to calm us down. Some time after, the old man told my grandmother that he was sure the guy was following us and had ill intentions, saying that he stopped him and tried to sell him some broken watches so we could run. He also said he believed the guy was naked under his coat and planned on flashing us, if not something far, far worse. The guy told him he didn't want his fucking watches, was really frustrated, and headed back to the direction he and we came from. The story spread quickly in the area and parents and kids were mindful that there still may be a sicko out and about, but as far as I know there were no further incidents. Creepy man wearing a coat in the summer heat. Let's not meet again. I can't explain what I saw on the trail one summer evening. This experience happened to me when I was 14 years old. I hadn't spoken to anyone about the event since it happened, not even my significant other. I'm 20 years old now, about to double major with my first 2 degrees in psychology and anthropology. Recently, for reasons unknown to me, the memories of this strange happening have resurfaced and are continuing to plague my waking thoughts, as well as my unconscious and subconscious. As we are taught in psychology, talking about the situation could help with repressed trauma, so here it goes. I live in the high desert mountains of Southern California, situated just below the Sierra Nevadas, about 30 minutes west of Mojave. My town is no booming metropolis. At the time, our largest market was a Kmart, one of the last still in business I might add, and we only had 4 stoplights in town. This takes place in a subsection of the town about 13 miles from the shops, banks, and restaurants, in a small community largely inhabited by retirees. It's smack dab in the middle of summer and the temperatures were well in the high 90s to low 100s. My nightly routine would consist of walking my Australian Shepherd. However, I would wait until it was almost dark to avoid the heat. I grabbed my phone, a small pocket knife, some headphones, my pup, and set out for my nightly walk. My community is also home to a significant amount of equestrian riders as well as cattle ranchers. The trails I walked were designated horse riding trails set between pastures. That night, I had decided to take the horse trail that stretches for approximately 2 miles between back-to-back paddocks. It's basically a long, narrow trail that's between very large backyards. My ending destination was the Equestrian Center, a communal equestrian park where all types of horse riders could enjoy various activities on their horses. Making my way through the sandy terrain of the trail, it was nearly dark now. The sky was becoming a deeper shade of blue every time I looked up, and my dog was becoming harder to see. I estimated my arrival at the Equestrian Center to be around 15 minutes from my current position. So I sent a text to my mother. "I'll be at the Equestrian Center in about 15 minutes, could you meet me there? I'm too tired to walk back." My mother had replied, "Sure, I'll leave in 10 minutes. Now, at this point I was just outside the east entrance of the Equestrian Center, where the Enchanted Forest Trail connects to the straight trail I was on, sort of like a three-way intersection. You can either go left into the Enchanted Forest Trail, or go straight into the Equestrian Center. Before I reached the intersection of the trails, I noticed a shift in my dog's behavior as she becomes anxious and seemingly worried. She had her eyes fixated to the forest and stopped dead in her tracks. I played it off as another animal within the forest like a bobcat or boar, as they weren't uncommon in my area. I gave her a slight tug on her collar, although she was still incessantly focused on the forest. With a little more convincing, I was able to get her moving forward, pushing on towards to Equestrian Center where my mother would be waiting for our arrival. Now, it was nearly pitch black with only the moon guiding me with its low light. There was just the slightest of visibility, forcing me to turn on my cell phone's dim flashlight. Entering the Equestrian Center now, I noticed something that startled me immensely. A very tall person, a man, about 10 to 15 feet into the Enchanted Forest Trail with his back towards me standing completely still. His head facing the sky and his hands open, palms pointing in front of him while his arms are at his side. He was tall, approximately 6 feet, slim build, short dark hair, was wearing what looked to be light blue scrubs, or at least a very thin blue napkin-like material, and was barefoot. What startled me the most was his demeanor and what he was doing. His stance was enough to scare anyone in that setting, but, as I approached him slowly, it appeared to me he was shaking, vibrating, or slightly convulsing, but doing so while standing up. It didn't seem like he had any control over it, although he remained his balance perfectly. Scared and not entirely sure what to do, I asked him, "Hello, excuse me." I paused momentarily and raised my voice slightly with the next question, "Is everything all right?" When I said that, he stops shaking altogether but still doesn't turn around or move another muscle. He just remains that same creepy position and doesn't even move. For a brief moment, I had thought I might have been imagining this. I glanced down at my dog and she was also concerned with state and condition of this man and began growling quietly. To then I knew it wasn't all in my head. When I looked back up, he had moved closer to me, about 7 feet closer, now almost on my trail's path. I had only looked at my dog for a split second, and he did it without making a sound. He still wasn't facing me either and his hands were still open, head still facing the sky. I wasn't about to wait and see what this guy was doing or what his intentions were, so slowly eased my way past him towards the Equestrian Center as quietly as I could before I felt that I was at a safe enough distance to start sprinting as fast I could away from this guy. When I reached the first arena of the Equestrian Center, I looked back into the direction of forest completely out of breath, and there he was. The fucker was standing on the edge of trail outside of the forest, standing there, facing me. I was too far away to see his face and frankly, I didn't want to. I couldn't make out features. All I could see was his silhouette illuminated by the moonlight peeking through the forest's trail. I continued to run with no intention of stopping until I found someone, I had never been so happy to see my nagging neighbor, Penny, and her moody mare, Jolene, riding in the Milano area. She noticed my distress, but due to her already harsh opinions of me, I had told her I had been on an endurance run and was just very out of breath and tired. I wanted to avoid any small-town gossip as much as I could. My mother arrived with impeccable timing. During the ride home, I broke down in a state of paranoia, distress, and panic at what I had just witnessed. My mother didn't know exactly what to make of it. So she recommended I file a police report with local PD. About an hour after getting home, an officer shows up to take my statement. Following up the next day, the same officer claims to have went and checked out the area but didn't find anyone or anything out of the blue apart from partials of bare footprints, but there's nothing incriminating it suspicious about someone going for a walk without shoes. He played it off as a joke and accused me of being under the influence, but I can assure you, I was completely sober. Nothing ever came out of this. I attended weekly therapy sessions for almost 2 years following this event and never went on walks by myself ever again. I had night terrors about the men and still do. I still don't know what to make of it. I don't know if I ever will. Male Karen FD my life over the summer of 2021, so, here goes, just for visual, I'm a non-conventional looking 50-something, moto-riding chick. After a year and a half of lockdown, I finally got vaxxed and decided to go back to the gym. It was the beginning of summer and I was nailing a perfect every other day sched. Hitting at the same time each morn. It was awesome. I'd leave feeling high as a kite on endorphins. Since I rode my moto to the gym, I'd get on that puppy and fly home or run errands. Life was good. At this gym, the moto parking often had a truck parked in the spot, so I hit up the front desk to ask, "What up?" They said it was the maintenance guy and just park near the bike rack. It'll be fine. So I did. Mind you, it was next to the bike rack. Not in front of it. Not blocking it. Literally next to it. Now I would arrive almost the same time every day. No bikes in the rack. I would leave almost the same time every day, one bike in the rack. The same one. But it's a rack that could accommodate perhaps 6 bikes, but this bike owner kept parking it at the end of the rack nearest my moto. So near my moto that times I would have to squeeze between the bike and my back tire. I really didn't care. I mean, I'm leaving the gym, high, happy, music in me ears, about to ride my motorcycle. It barely registered that this bike owner kept doing it. 4 weeks. It was a split second of WTF and then forgotten. I come out this one day and I notice the bike is now fully blocking me, squeezing between it and my moto. I mean, they had to know that for me to gain access, I would have to move their back tire. Which I did. As I'm about to mount my ride, I see a note on my seat. Says, "You're a moron for parking your motorcycle here." Now, you might think this pissed me off. But it didn't. It was actually kind of humorous. I wrote on the note that I had permission to park here from the gym, that there was plenty of room at the bike rack for his bike, to get a grip Karen and to smile more, you'll be more positive. I then put it on his bike and quite literally promptly forgot about it. Inconsequential to life and liberty. Next time I go to gym, great workout, all is righteous. And as I'm leaving, an old guy stops me and says, "Why did you touch my bike?" I look and see an old man and I realize that this is the person who's been on a campaign to engage me in my moto parking. I say, "Oh, you're the guy who left the note." He said he didn't leave a note, and why did I touch his bike? I said, "You have been blocking access to my moto for weeks." He said he has not, and why did I damage his bike? I said, "I didn't damage your bike. Look, if you'll be honest, I'm willing to have a conversation with you, but if you're going to lie, I'm going to walk away." He said, "Is that a threat?" I stopped a sec cause it was such a ludicrous turn. Then I said sarcastically, "Yeah, that's a threat." He then lost his shit. Started yelling that I threatened him and damaged his bike and he was going in the club to call the cops. Which he proceeded to do. So I'm standing outside kind of in a bit of shock. I have some PTSD, and one of the things I must do do at all costs is to not create any new trauma or drama in my life. So my flight mechanism was strong at this moment. So I figured to perhaps de-escalate his freak out. I went in and tried to ask him why this isn't a conversation. But he just started yelling, get back, you threatened me and damaged my bike. The gym is wide open at the desk. Meaning anyone in the gym has a front row seat to him yelling and carrying on. I'm trying to reason with him and he's just yelling get back. While on the gym's desk phone to the cops. The cool chick behind the counter looked at me and said, perhaps you should just wait outside. So I head out and now I'm trippin'. 'Cause this has become something. After a minute or so I decided I needed to get the flock out of Dodge. I mean, the whole PTSD thing was being triggered big time and I just needed to bounce. So I go in the club with my ID in hand and I go to the guy and say, here, just take a picture of my ID and I'm going to go. Of course, he starts in again on the get back, you threatened me, you damaged my bike. The cool chick behind the counter takes my ID and copies it and hands him the copy and I'm out. After an hour or so I get home and I call the gym to talk to the manager. She tells me that this guy has been at the gym for 15 years and while he's always been a decent dude, he is getting on in age, 80, and might be a little declining. I said I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at this point since he pretty much announced his assassination of my character to the whole gym, of which I cross paths with every morn. Also him having friends after a 15-year membership, I felt like I wouldn't be comfortable going back to the gym, ever. So the really nice manager canceled my membership on the spot. She was really understanding and I was grateful for her compassion. And for the record, yeah. They can cancel your membership on the spot. If they tell you different, well, BS. I got a call from a cop after a bit, told my side of the story, cop said no crime was committed and that the guy was a little unhinged. So much nothing happened that he wasn't even taking a report. Like, didn't write down a single detail, I thought that was the end of it. Yeah, not even close, bud. A few weeks later I get a letter in the mail saying I have a temporary restraining order placed against me and to show up at court on this date. Now, you have to know something about me at this point. I am a squeaky clean human. Nothing but a speeding ticket in my life. I avoid cops like the plague. I avoid the system like the plague. I want nothing to do with the legal world and have successfully avoided it my whole life. Up to this point, I was dealing with the aftermath of this ridiculousness. Losing membership at a gym I liked sucked. But I was getting over it. Past it. And life was okay-ish. But this. Now I'm pissed. I mean, PTSD flare UPS, triggers, no sleep, no eat, stupid mind going WTF. So I go on Reddit and look up lawyer help cause I have no idea what to do here. I get advice, just go to the court date, tell your side of the story, don't get emotional, stay professional, it should all be okay, so I go to the court date. I figure it's going to be like an episode of Judge Judy. I mean, that's really the only court thing I've seen in my life for reference of what I'm about to experience. Oh, and I should mention too, I have no idea what this guy looks like. Our interaction couldn't have been more than a minute in total and TBH, I never really looked at the guy. I mean, cursory glance but never focused on him at all. So I had Northwest idea at the court if he was there or not. When my case got called, his lawyer was on Zoom and asking for continuance because I hadn't been served papers. Whatever that means, so we got a new date 3 weeks away and I got paperwork. I took it home and looked into it, Moda. That SOB wrote out a story of grand proportions. It reads like a cheap dime store novel of highly fictional content. I waved my hands and arms in a menacing manner and said yes I did it. I damaged your bike and I am going to kick your FN ass, you're just an old man and I will kick your FN ass. Like, What? Like? What? Yeah, I did that for the next few days. I mean, how in the actual moda does a person defend themselves against such outrageous accusations? I don't fight. I have never been in a fight in my life. I have never challenged someone to a fight. I hate violence. I'm an empath. A pacifist. I'm just this little woman. WTF. So I go back on Reddit and hit up legal advice and again, got the same advice to go into court. Just be honest, calm, cool, collected, tell the story and you should be golden. So I show up at the next court date and I'm ready. I got my story tight and ready to spank this P.O.S with some truth. Again, still don't know what he looks like, so don't know if he's there. Call my name and just his lawyer is there. Asking for a continuance. I actually blurted out, no. The judge was a bit taken aback. I said, look, this has been really stressful. I need this to be over. I can't sleep, barely eating. None of what he said is true. Why can't we deal with this today? And I find out that I was supposed to write up my side and submit it to the court. But nowhere did I see it say this, and my legal help never told me I needed to do that either. So now we have another court date. An entire month away. FML, I should also mention the judge was this old white guy who was the biggest I mean, just condescending and rude. He insulted the flock out of me when I asked him once I fill out the paperwork, where do I bring it? He just gave me a 2-minute condescending answer that never told me where. It took 3 times me asking for him to finally say, the clerk down the hall outside the courtroom. So far, this is a living nightmare. I mean, it was a non-event. Nothing happened, but an old guy freaked out and made up a story to validate his freak out, and I'm being dragged along for the ride. At this point, I concede I'm out of my league. I need a lawyer. I really don't have money for one and would have to borrow any that I would pay them. So I find a lawyer, and since I have never spoken to a lawyer, I have no idea if he is good or bad, but what I do know is he seems cool. So for the next few weeks, we have appointments. He gets the cool chick behind the desk to come to court as my witness to tell her side, which, by the way, old guy made up a whole story about how I chased him into the gym and threatened him in there until a guy gym employee came to his rescue. Which is fully contradicted by the woman employee behind the counter who witnessed the entire thing. I've got this in the bag. I meet with my lawyer the day before to go over things, and he says that the guy's lawyer is willing to do this thing called a peaceful no contact. This means, no condescending judge, no trying to prove my side of the story. This means, it's over and I get to sleep tonight. I really wanted my legal bills to be paid by him since he fabricated an entire story and brought it to the legal system. But what I wanted and needed more was for this to be over. So, I pulled the trigger and agreed to the deal. Except the old guy's lawyer was crafty. She didn't answer that evening. We had to show up in court the next day and proceed as if the offer was not on the table. I am very strongly vax and mask. I have a medical background and I understand contagions. I didn't want to go to court. No one masks. Not the judge, not the bailiff, not anyone there for their court date. But I went. You still with me? 'Cause this should have been over 20 paragraphs ago. Here's the foo right in the A. His lawyer blackmailed me. If I didn't pay $200 for his damaged bike and agree to the peaceful no contact, with prejudice on his part, she would postpone this day's hearing, stating he recently had hip surgery and wasn't up to the hearing, even though he was in court this day. Then she would dismiss the temporary restraining order and sue me for elder abuse. Yeah. So, I was essentially FD up the A. I couldn't afford to defend myself against elder abuse. Even if I could no doubt easily win, I had no dollar to even consider the idea. So I had to take that deal. So to recap, the beginning to my awesome summer turns into a 3-month debacle, all because an 80-year-old guy who has some cognitive issues and decides that he doesn't like my motorcycle near the bike rack, makes up a fake story, takes it to court, and his lawyer out-lawyers my lawyer, and I'm out $2,000 that I had to borrow. I lost membership to a gym I enjoyed. I lost an entire summer having to deal with a triggered PTSD scenario, and now that I am a few months away from it, I have become more of a recluse and have not rejoined another gym. Or re-engaged in society for that matter. FML, oh, and I never once looked at him. I can still say to this day, I have no idea what this POS looks like. I've done this because as my PTSD flares I don't want to be seeing his face.